Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Institute for Personal Development, where total consciousness is the new frontier. Kriya Yoga is the union of the individual with the divine. Join us as we explore the practices that initiate this process.
Well, good morning. I am Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda, and I am hoping that Lisa may join us here this morning. There seems to be some sort of technical difficulty with her being able to sign in today, but today we're going to be talking a little bit about avidya, ignorance, and union with the divine. And today's show, as we were posted, will be a cross-reference between the concepts of false gods that are mentioned in the Bible and this concept of avidya, ignorance. Ignorance in yoga is basically mistaking the impermanent for the permanent. And that's one of the things that we've been talking about here pretty consistently. Oh, I see Lisa has finally made it in. Good morning, Lisa. Oops, another technical difficulty. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning. How is everybody today?
I think all right. I had to do the opening.
Okay.
Probably not as good as you do, but...
Well, in this day and age of technology, we had a few glitches on my end, so I apologize to our listeners for that. And again, I am your hostess, Lisa Winton. Obviously, with me is Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda. So, good morning, Swami. So, I apologize for not being there for you today, but how are you?
I'm doing well, and how about you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing awesome.
Yeah.
So, thank you, listeners, for tuning in, and apologize for the glitches this morning. But have we introduced the show yet already, Swami?
Well, I did mention that we'd be talking about avidya, ignorance, and union with the divine. And I started to talk about, just what exactly, ignorance was based on, our interpretation of the Yoga Sutras. And,
perfect.
The cross-reference with the concept of false gods that are mentioned in the Bible.
Well, I had a conversation with somebody yesterday and explained to them about our program today and asked them if they had any questions. And so we were going over the description of the program, and one of the questions is probably very basic for you, but the question was, what do you mean when we write in the description mistaking the impermanent for the permanent? So I wanted to throw that out at you.
Yeah, because remember, in yoga physiology, yoga psychology, reality is multidimensional. That things are happening on different levels. So with regard to making choices of our sources of sustenance, that we have options. And two of our options are what they call dualistic, which are the parts of reality that are in constant change. But underlying duality is this indivisible, unified state. In quantum physics, they call it non-locality, where things are unchanging. In this unified state, that would be considered the permanent. The impermanent would be anything that would fall, under the realms of things that are tangible. And so a big part of the concept of yoga is literally rebirthing your body in this other energy field. And like we have been saying, you're trying to connect to something that's invisible and intangible. So it's not an easy catch. And according to, most of the scriptures and stuff, the way that we can identify with it is you've got to refine yourself. one of the reasons why we're always talking about the importance of purification, because you have to be sensitive enough to feel something that is invisible and intangible. And then the other thing is you have to be able to recognize it by its qualities. And that's one of the reasons why most of our religions focus on the concept of conduct. Because by mirroring the conduct, you kind of create the opportunity to identify with this source of sustenance. Mm-hmm. But the conduct, you have to remember, doesn't equal the connection. And that's a big distinction.
So just because I, help an older woman across the street isn't making me connected to spirit.
Right, you could still be drawing from the impermanent. That's an important thing, that, the yoga meaning union of the individual with the divine, that you actually use what you really do need as a symbol for validation. You're not drawing from the dualistic dimensions. You're not drawing from the outside world. You're internally supported.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and again, coming... Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, the other question that it was kind of like a two-parter was the person I was talking to didn't really quite understand the difference between personal power and ego, and then how do I know when I'm being ignorant?
Yeah, it's all going to come down to what source of sustenance do I desire? That the whole thing of literally rebirthing your body in the life force, where you desire this void or this nothing, is where the changes start to take place. That when matter and mind come together with truth and wholeness, that changes everything. That's the one dynamic that impregnates the seed of the mind. And that's the one thing that starts to enable us to expand our identity beyond the limits of body-bound awareness. And again, it's not just an attitude, it's not just an intellectual accomplishment. You have to literally rebirth the body in it, because the body, the sense of self, ego, is all bound up in our body. And the body, we all have needs, we're all codependent. Now, if we desire particles, which is dualistic, then our minds remain small. Mm-hmm. If we desire waves, then again we're drawing from something that is dualistic. It doesn't produce the progressive cycle. Mm-hmm. See, it's when you desire the void or the nothing that impregnates the seed of the mind. Today we use phrases like, be open-minded. Mm-hmm. And, it's just a string of words. And of course, without understanding the physics of spirituality and without literally experiencing the benefits of the connection, then it deteriorates into what I like the term Alice Bailey uses in The Labors of Hercules, astralism. It's mm-hmm. You're in the realms of your mind, which is different than the realms of matter, but still not the same as the realms of the absolute.
Mm-hmm. So there are other things
and again,
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
There are other things that that you hear people say in the spiritual community and things, and that would be like let go and let God, that type of thing. So that to me would tells me that that you've taken yourself out, for having a sense of responsibility and turning it over to God. So it's not like, you're taking yourself out of the equation, but that's not what we want to do either. And I'm not exactly sure if that's going down that road of avidya. Also, what do you think?
Well, again, it's the whole thing of let go and let God. Again, it's a slick phrase. And the spiritual community is loaded with all of this kind of cliche language. But in reality, the concept of let go and let God is not passive. That in order to do it successfully, you have to detach from your dependency upon the outside world, but very proactively attach to this invisible, intangible source of sustenance. Because again, we're all codependent. We all have needs. And whatever it is that we are addicted to is going to determine our outcome. And so again, it's like, well, how do you get addicted to what you really do need?
Right.
Is what it's
yeah. Well, I
going
think
to boil
that's
down
the big
to.
question. Right. So how does one do that?
I remember the first time, I took a sip of coffee and I thought, ooh, and somebody said, well, you have to acquire a taste for it. And I remember the first time I took a drag on a cigarette, and I thought, ooh, and they said, well, you have to acquire a taste for it. And the first time I took a sip of Scotch whiskey, I thought, ooh, and they said, you have to acquire a taste for it. Now, when I tell people, that, take a breath and feel connected to something that's pure, powerful, and sacred, and they think, ugh, I just turn and say, you have to acquire a taste for it. That we have to proactively change the reward circuits in our brains, just the way we trained ourselves to like, things in the outside world. It's all conditioning, it's all patterning. And with the reprogramming of the pattern of our physical bodies, we change our desires. But the physics of spirituality, gives us clues, because what we desire determines our outcome. And it's very important, because again, avidya is mistaking the impermanent for the permanent. That we're attached to something that's dualistic and tangible, but we think we're drawing from something that's invisible and unchanging.
Well, I know we've had conversations about this before, and it seems like a lot of our discussions that we have kind of go down this particular road about if you don't have this connection to spirit, then really all else doesn't really matter. And I think you're pretty much saying the same thing, is that you have to acquire a taste for it. So how do we consciously know when we've acquired a taste for it? Well,
I think the things, that really kind of happen is, first thing is you are sensitive enough to hear the call. And then you are strong enough to walk a solitary path. Because it's going to cause you to break away from the herd mentality. Even say, for example, when you analyze the hero's journey, that changing the pattern of your body is going to require a tremendous amount of effort, and you're going to have to reprogram all of the different facets of this pattern, all of the different facets of our minds. So with repetition comes absorption, but you also need good instruction.
Right. You know what, Swami, let's hold that thought so we can hear a word from our sponsors. So listeners, we'll be back in a few moments.
Okay.
If you are looking for a Samadhi-based experience, IPD Kriya Yoga has the goods. A complete yoga program that includes the practices and the process. Kriya Yoga Series 1 live classes and videos. Get your arms around the spiritual science of Kriya Yoga.
You know, the intention of why we practice is to embody the spirit, to feel connected to the life force.
Kriya Yoga Asana live classes and videos. A cosmically engineered system of exercises to initiate apotheosis. A system of exercises engineered for dining and dancing at the Cosmic Ballroom. Kriya Yoga Series 2 live classes and videos. A practice in open forum designed to facilitate positive growth of consciousness. Get your Labyrinth video.
I find the positive side of this is pulls a lot of things together.
Kriya Yoga Mantra and Meditation. With repetition comes absorption. Pray on prana and become divine.
At the same time, we all have a unique talent and gift to give back to the universe.
Private sessions. The mysteries of the universe have always been handed down verbally from teacher to student. Call or click now and get started. 603-929-0303 or www.ipdtransform.com. Namaste. Oh, welcome back. For those of you just joining us, you're listening to The Voice of Yoga, and we are talking consciousness. Okay, so today we are talking about Avidya, and during the break I was thinking about all the written works that are out there. You know, for example, let's just take the Bible, for example, and I realize it's written by what you would say butterflies, and you've also have said before that some people who are interpreting the Bible are caterpillars. Could you maybe kind of explain that the difference between the caterpillar and the butterfly, and why the caterpillar might be looking and reading, you know, some of these spiritual works, and in essence really not kind of understanding the message, which would be a part of Avidya? Would that be right?
Well, yeah. And you know, I think a perfect example of that whole concept is in the Labors of Hercules, you know, the astrological interpretation by Alice Bailey, you know, when she talks about the hero's journey. And in one of the labors where Hercules has to find the golden apples of Hesperides, there are 5 tasks that he has to overcome in order to perform this labor. And in the framework of this labor, he meets this image, this person, Bucerus, who chains him to an altar for a year. And Bucerus is the false teacher. You know, so again, you know, like when you have humans in the larvae state trying to make sense out of something that was written by humans in the adult state, you know, there's a lot that's lost in translation. And that's one of the things that I think really has to happen is our spiritual communities have to start to get more in sync with, you know, ways of being able to measure the credibility of what it is that you're doing. You know, kind of like when a blacksmith makes a sword or a knife. You know, they spend endless hours of cutting, shaping, tempering, and polishing the steel. But the moment, you know, of truth doesn't happen until they ring it on the anvil. You know, because appearances can be very deceiving. And the same is true with a spiritual practice. I mean, especially yogis. I mean, we spend endless hours in distilling, purifying, perfecting, you know, calibrating ourselves. But when do we know if we are, you know, if our efforts have been worthy?
Right.
You know, when the outside world fails us is typically, you know, when you get the opportunity to ring it on the anvil. You know, when your sense of self is totally established in a relationship with something that is unchanging. But if you don't build, you know, this relationship into your practice, you know, it's kind of like the blacksmith that maybe spends all the time cutting, shaping, and polishing and never tempered the steel. You know, because it might look just as good, you know, but if the steel isn't tempered, or even in tempering it, you over-tempered it and it became brittle. You know, the steel can shatter like glass. You know, or if it isn't tempered properly, it will just bend when it hits the anvil. And the same is true with the spiritual practice. You know, so one of the most important things, you know, is this whole thing of our connection to the right source of sustenance. And I find that it's probably the thing that is most neglected. You know, because very few people are really purifying themselves. And the ones that are, they're doing it because they want to look younger or live longer, as opposed to prepare the body for the invocation of a more subtle source of sustenance.
Right. We had talked about purification in some of our earlier shows of the physical body, but also purification of the mind, too. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. You have to purge yourself of all your erroneous concepts. You know, again, coming back to Avidya, you know, where we are using something tangible instead of something that's invisible and intangible. And plus the other thing is the whole concept of purity in yoga is to be able to think, feel, say, and do one and the same thing. You know, so the whole thing of concentration or focus is a big part of the yoga practice. But what we're focusing on is of the utmost importance.
Right. So that brings back what you were saying earlier, what you're looking for, what you desire. Is this what you mean? You're bringing it back to what you desire.
Exactly.
Right. And then how I think is what we become. Right?
Yeah. Well, see, the way most of us try and understand it is, and the way I think it's misunderstood is, first of all, we think God is a person. So now we have an astral image for this, you know, supreme being that we pray to. And the way that we spell that is P-R-A-Y, which means now we ask this person for all the things that we think we want or need to be happy in this incarnation. Where, in fact, the way that it really works is if you pray on God, and not P-R-A-Y, but P-R-E-Y.
E-Y.
You know, where your whole sense of self is totally established in a relationship with what you really do need, your number one need. You know, again, God isn't a person. It's the force right now that is supporting our lives. Now, when you have this primary relationship with your divinity, your inner environment is percolating. You know, I mean, you have the euphoria of being in love. There is a calmness, there is a confidence, there is a clarity that comes with this connection that we didn't know prior. Now, thought is an energy and it's capable of producing effects, but it is all measured based on the amount of strength we emit it with. See, it's belief that gives thoughts the power of intention.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you believe that you're good enough and you start to admit a thought, that thought will have the power of intention. See, if you emit the same thought with the burden of doubt, it will just dribble off.
Right.
That's the whole dynamic of the miracle in the Bible. You know, where Jesus says, it has nothing to do with me, it's your belief.
Right.
Now, of course, you got to remember that there is a 37.5% placebo effect on anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that most of us are just looking for permission to believe in something so that we can emit a thought that will have the power of intention.
Mm-hmm. So again, thought has become very, very powerful. You know, what we think is what we become, and that kind of brings about all the other times that we've said this in all the other programs as well. So it really is kind of a simple process, but it is a procedure and a process. So we have to really watch what we're thinking, right? I mean, we should really take stock at what we're thinking every day.
We're thinking on many levels. See, when matter and mind are still attached to duality, your mind is small. And from that limited perspective, we do feel like victims. Everything is happening to us. When we rebirth the body, when we train the mind to look for this invisible, intangible source of sustenance, and then we internalize it in our physical bodies, that will start to impregnate the seed of the mind. That will start to expand the mind in a positive direction. So you'll actually make a transition of going from victim to the creator. You know, because what isn't conscious is going to be unconscious or karmic in our reality. But you definitely increase your chances when you start to expand your field of awareness. That's why the goal of yoga is total consciousness.
Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
But it begins with this union with the permanent.
Bring us back to the very beginning of our show. Well, that's probably a good place to probably stop right there. So, listeners, in closing, I want to invite you to visit our website. Don't forget, follow us on Pinterest and Twitter and Facebook, and keep those comments and questions and curiosities coming. We do enjoy hearing from you. And be sure to tune into our program next week. Any final thoughts or comments or a quick preview on our show for next week, Swami?
Did you have any ideas what you might want to talk about? I had one request.
I would like to explore what you were talking about earlier, and that would be talking more about the labors of Hercules. And we can bring it back to Avidya. We can talk about Hollywood's version of Hercules and the 12 labors. So I thought that might be a really interesting program for us to do next week.
Okay, we could, because we've seen that movie Hercules and Hollywood
I think we have a lot to talk about.
All right. Well, I wish everybody a good day and namaste.
Namaste. Thank you for listening to our program, The Voice of Yoga. This is Lisa Winton with me, Swami Jayananda, signing off. Have a wonderful Kriya Yoga kind of day. Namaste.